Hey guys, it's Krystal Lee Moore Lucier here, also known as your home sweet home 509 Realtor, Krystal Lee Moore, and I am so excited about our guest today. We have Scott Stratten, the founder of UnMarketing, author, speaker, everything. So excited. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about his latest book, a little bit about all the wonderful things that he teaches realtors and leaders and entrepreneurs. And just really excited about this conversation. Welcome, Scott.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. And hello to the 519 and everybody around there, including our son, who is there at college right now. At least he should be. If he's listening, he needs to go to class.
It is
But
pretty
yes,
snowy here today. He may
yeah,
not
maybe
be.
stay in today. That's fine. That's fine.
Unless
Thank
he
you for
has
having me.
a well-timed message to get his driveway or his roadway shoveled, right?
100% just like, and President Benson will show up and shovel it away.
Fingers crossed.
Right.
So welcome. So Scott, I think one of the reasons I'm so excited about having you here is that early on in my real estate career, I got to hear you speak on stage with Roy LePage and with Buffini. Um, and I was always so impressed, not only by your amazing stories, but how passionate you are.
Thank you.
And I guess my first question is, how did this get started? Like, where did the idea kind of turn into where you're going to be
Yeah.
impacting so many people?
Well, thank you for that, by the way. And I wasn't how do I put this the proper way? I wasn't a normal child. I was when I was 12. I wanted to be a motivational speaker. Everybody else wanted to be a firefighter, an astronaut, and I saw Les Brown on TV. So this was in 1987, and we're sitting in the living room. This is back in the olden times where you had to stand up and go up and turn the TV channel by hand. So whenever the channel was on, it would stay on that for like 3 days because I wasn't going to get up and change it. So it was on WNED, which is a Buffalo news station. It's a PBS station, and
Okay.
and it came across the Lake Ontario to us, and we were watching it. And they were doing a pledge drive, and they're like, if you donate $32 a month, we'll send you a VHS or beta copy of Les Brown's motivational talk, and here is a clip of it for you. And they play it on TV. And Les, and if you've never seen Les, watch him. He's one of the godfathers of motivational speaking. He's still one of my idols. And I looked at it and I looked at my mom and I'm like, is that a job? Can I yell at people and go home? And she's like, if you try hard enough, son. And because I had identified and because, my mom was so supportive of it, you start learning when you get in your teen years, what makes you different. And I had realized that I didn't get nervous standing up in front of and talking to a room in a classroom in any kind of setting.
Nice.
And you started learning, oh, people don't want to do this, and it's not a skill, it's a missing synapse in my brain. Like I didn't learn this, I didn't train it. I'm just really fortunate that it's lacking in my head. So I do the same thing. I'd run for class president, I do all these type of things, no problems. I graduated high school and college because I could present. And so then I started learning, well, what does it take? So that's what you have to, you reverse engineer things you want to be for
Yeah.
me. And it was researching. So how do you be a speaker and be on stage? You got to get invited on stage. How do you get invited on stage? Well, because I saw you speak somewhere. Okay, well then nobody's seen me speak. Well, then what's the next reason? Well, let me go find out. So I'm in college. I'm in college for HR, which nobody can believe I was in HR. I went into HR and I joined the HRPAO, which was at the time the HR Association of Ontario. And I worked my way into committee, which helped pick the speakers for their annual conference. And it
Nice.
was me and 8 HR VPs. And I was a college student because nobody tried. And I was all in on the speakers and I started learning them. So I knew a lot about them. And I started seeing why people picked the speakers. And then one of the main reasons was they had a new business book. So if you weren't known and you hadn't got any reputation, one of the best ways to get in the door was a business book. All right, how do we get a business book? How do I get a book deal? And I started, cutting my teeth in the music business in Toronto in the 90s. I managed some bands in the 90s. And if you want to learn how to market, have no money. Like, right? It's like, it's the best way to learn, how do you
Absolutely.
fill, right? How do you fill Lee's Palace? How do you fill call the office, rest in peace, no longer there. But how do you fill these great venues and clubs on a Wednesday night, right? You don't
Yeah.
poster, you don't do these things. You start learning about this stuff.
Yeah.
So all of those things, so we could have written the book on marketing. We could have called it Everything I Learned in Business, I Learned from Lee's Palace. Like, it was just
Right.
learning through those things, because in music, you think about it, right? In music, you have an audience, and let's say you finally get an audience, and let's say it's small and you're starting out and you get 20 people on a Wednesday night, which, by the way, is decent on a 20 at a Wednesday night at a local, place that has local
Yeah.
music. But here's the trick. Here's the thing. Those 20 people show up and you play a good show or great show. You can't let those 20 people leave yet. You got to somehow get their information, because
Yes.
once they leave, you got to remarket and find them again. And that's like anything in business. And that's when I started learning about how the gold is in the list. If we can build a list. So way back then, and again, late 90s, we started asking for people's email address if they had one, if they existed.
Yeah.
Because back then in corporate, in the 90s, you got like 5 email addresses for the whole company. There was sales at company name, marketing at company name, right? So it's really rare.
Yeah.
And except if you were in college, a lot of colleges, you'd have email addresses.
Yeah.
So we had a younger demographic for the music. So we'd say, okay, it's $3 at the door, or we'll waive it if you give us your information, and we'll add you to our VIP list.
Yes.
And then,
Okay.
and then, so you'd get probably half. So those 20 people, 10 would give you their email address. You then email those 10 people when the next show is happening a month later. But you say, hey, you want to come to the show again since you're a fan? But here's the thing, you're a VIP. You can bring up to 3 friends on your guest list,
Nice.
and they don't have to pay either. I don't care if it's $4 at the door. You're a VIP on the guest list. So the next show has 50. And that's part of, that was learning it. And that everything started because of that type of stuff. So then I was in music, I was in booking, I was in HR. We went all through all of these things, but my end goal through all of these things, the only thing I did do and forever want to do, is speak on stage. I love it. So I had to figure that out. And that was, so then how do you get the book deal? So I'll keep reverse engineering. So let's keep
Mhm.
going back. So how do I get a book deal? Well, I start talking to authors who have books, and they find out how they get theirs. It turns out you make enough noise online, they'll find you. So I just sauntered onto Twitter and started hanging out for a little while, tweeted, 100,000 times, got a huge following. And next thing you know, I get Shannon Vargo from Wiley and Sons, publisher out of Jersey, reaches out, she's still our editor to this day,
Nice.
reaches out and says, hey, we've heard of you now. Why haven't you written a book? I wrote back, hey, I've heard of you too. Why haven't you offered me a book deal yet? And she said, touche. And then we work from there. And 6 books later,
Amazing.
but here's the thing. So then we get the book. So
Yeah.
now UnMarketing's coming out. So the first UnMarketing is about to come out, and it's going to come out in the fall of, there, you got it in your hand too. Yeah. You fall of 2010. So fall of 2010, it's coming out. I have a great following on Twitter. I'm
Yep.
I'm really near the top Canadian on Twitter, pretty high up in North America.
Yeah.
It did until Justin Bieber came on, and then it screwed
Yeah.
it up for everybody. So then I send out a tweet in June of 2010, and I said, hey, the Unbook Tour is coming up in the fall. The reason why I called it an Unbook Tour was I was not going to any bookstores, because that I would just go to bookstores and see authors sit there at a table and nobody's there.
Yeah.
Right. They were a glorified bathroom direction giver. Right. And that was it. Or somebody would walk in, they ask for whatever latest book, the latest Game of Thrones, whatever, but not yours.
Yeah.
Right. Because if nobody knows you, they just feel bad for you. And I wasn't going to do it, because and then also you go broke. And one of the ways through that was learning from other authors. And 98% of them said, don't do a classical book tour. The publisher won't pay for it. You're going to lose a lot of money. And
Okay.
here's the thing, right? So one of the things that Alice and I always talk about is wisdom. And wisdom we consider is time plus mistakes.
Yes.
Right? So as you get older, that's what experience is. You've screwed up enough to say, okay, I get what could and couldn't happen. Here's the difference, though. If you can learn from other people's wisdom, you've made it exponential. It's collective wisdom.
Absolutely.
So I didn't have to go and lose all the money on the book tour. So I'm learning these things from all these authors who are more than happy to talk to me about this stuff. It's because I just asked.
That's fantastic.
And then I put a tweet out. I send out one tweet. I'm telling you, one tweet. And I said, who wants to stop on the unbooked tour? So I was going to do a talk at any place. I'll give a talk to your association, your group, your networking panel, your
Yeah.
friends. I don't care. All you got to do is fly me there, put me up, and order 100 books. And 30 cities, 30 people stepped up and did it. So,
Wow.
and I did 30 cities in 10 weeks. That was 30 talks in 10 weeks. And there was people were like, "Oh, you're like a musician." And I'm like, "No, no, no. There was no logical geographic direction, right? There was no like tour bus that went around. We were all over the place, just running and jumping and hiding. And one of the reasons why you had to put me up at a hotel is I was broke. It was coming from '08, '09 to 2010,
Yeah.
and there was and I went bankrupt. My agency was gone. Everything was gone. Like a lot of people, it was
Yeah.
just it was hit by a truck, and it was like I believe in social media. And the reason why I believe in social media is because I believe in humans.
Yeah.
I believe in the power of people and connection and community. And I knew there was something there, and that was a leap of faith onto Twitter. So I'm on Twitter tweeting a billion times with no revenue coming in, but building my connection, my network, because I went to Twitter because I didn't have colleagues in my office. I didn't have an office. And when you're an entrepreneur, and I think realtors, I consider realtors to me to be the entrepreneur. So because
Definitely.
you're running your own business pretty much. I understand there's broker and all and love it. And you know how much I love Roy LePage and the whole crew.
Yeah.
But you sink or swim based on you.
100%. Yeah.
And that to me is that's the entrepreneur feeling in your gut, right? Because
Yeah.
there's no ceiling and there's no floor.
Yeah. That, Brian Buffini says that. Everyone gets so excited, like, no ceiling,
Brian,
take
yes, he does.
anything. But yeah, definitely no floor.
And
Zero
so I
is
did
not the bottom.
So I did the 30 cities in 10 weeks. Half of them were like local associations, either social media clubs, which were popular back in the day,
Okay.
and then American Marketing Association chapters. And the other half, 15 cities, 15 people ran a book event for me that have never run an event in their life. They just had belief and faith in me and the book. And
Nice.
I went after that 10 weeks in those 30 cities. I didn't stop speaking on stages at conferences from that momentum until COVID.
Amazing.
530 or so keynotes in conferences for a decade. And I could not be happier when
I
it,
have to say, so as someone that's been in several audiences that you have spoken to, I find, and even in this conversation, like you actually not only practice what you preach, but you talk about values and passion and
mm,
believing in what you do, but you so obviously do that, and you call things for what they are, which is important, but the passion you have for speaking comes across. And I've seen
thank you.
you I believe I will say COVID has ruined my brain. So I believe it was in Winnipeg. I want to
Yeah.
say Winnipeg
The
for the
national
Jackass
conference. Yep.
Whisperer. Yep.
Yep.
Um, but the same passion, different information. So it's never, I never felt that I'm like, oh, I've heard it already.
Yeah.
But so you don't feel that, but you feel that passion every time.
Thank
And
you.
you really do make it your business to stay informed and keep adding to that collection of knowledge, because I walk
Thank
away
you.
from these, and I know all of my colleagues do too, with so much knowledge, and but you make it funny too.
Thank you.
Like
I
you're,
think I believe if you
yeah,
laugh, I believe if you're laughing, you're listening.
yes,
And that's a big part of it. And one of the behind the scenes things that everybody can hear is one of my mistakes though, as well as defaulting to the humor all the time. And sometimes I realized that partway through, I was ending with, I think I ended it with in Winnipeg. I had a Taco Bell joke at the end, and it was a Taco Bell tweet. And somebody tweeted, I just went to the bathroom and had a food baby, and I think Taco Bell is the father. Horrible, right? Just wonderfully gross. And Taco Bell replied though, as of the brand, and said, "We want a DNA test."
uh,
Right. So it was just like it was so perfect, and I would
yeah,
end with it. But I would end with it when I used to give social media talks, and then I
right,
just kept it in because I got to end it on such a huge laugh.
right.
But then after a while, it became off topic. But I just kept saying, "Oh, by the way, I just want to end on my favorite tweet," and I realized I was just wanted to end on a laugh. So I eventually took it out. But it was just like I was guilty of because it's intoxicating.
It is fun.
Having
Yeah,
having anybody laugh at
yeah,
something you say is intoxicating. Having a entire conference, a room, an audience do it.
yes.
Woo.
So that's actually leads me to my next question. So you mentioned that you were on stage speaking and you loved it and it was great. And then the big pandemic showed up
Yeah.
and everything just kind of shifted. Now I know a lot of anyone that performs and relies on audience feedback was struggling. Now, did you
Yeah.
find, I think as if you're speaking in a meeting like this, like we're virtual, but we can,
Yeah.
that I'm listening. What did you do? Did you have to do any virtual keynotes?
Yeah. So that was a whole, so, when I was doing 60 to 70 conferences a year when it hit. And one of the things when you call yourself a professional speaker, which means you get paid to speak, is you have to be professional. You have to be the professional, meaning when COVID hit and we went virtual, a lot of us in speaking are used to going to the event and being much a glorified Vegas, headline DJ. I'd show up with a USB key and say, make me look and sound pretty. And that would be it. When COVID hit and we all went to these, to webinars, you're everything. You're the producer, lighting, you're PSAV, you're the crew at the back of the room. You are
Yeah,
internet, IT, you're all those things. And the one thing you can't do is sell yourself as a professional in something you are not. And
yeah,
that started happening. So I took 4 months and I didn't do any webinar just to get really honed in on this. Well, the stuff right now, the stuff you and I are how we're talking right now on
100%.
Zoom,
Yep.
on it, where it's just like going into like, like I can go into a slide here, right? And I can
Oh,
go into the
fancy.
slide, I can hop out,
Nice.
like knowing these type of things,
Great background too,
and
by
and,
the
and
way.
knowing that I can reverse my camera and I can talk in a slide like this. So this is how we did,
Ah,
right? So I'm in the
okay.
slide talking, and I go back around, and I'm come back here. But it's also learning the equipment. It's learning what Stream Deck and what it can do for you. And I just dropped it there. And all these things you have, like thing
Yeah,
is when it hits the fan, you got to know what to do in that split second. So if
yeah,
your internet goes down, what do you do?
yeah,
If your power goes out, what do you do? Can you hop on your phone within 10 seconds and know how to get back on?
yeah.
Right? Do you know how to troubleshoot while you're talking? Like I've had this camera go out, right? I've had a camera go out, and can I, flip over to a secondary camera without even flinching? Because one of the things about speaking is you don't you don't let the audience know what's going wrong.
Yes.
And we have a default with that. Like if we're talking and a video doesn't play right, or I've seen people do it. Say, I had a video here, but it's not playing right today, so we're just going to
Yeah.
go past this. The whole audience who didn't know they were getting a video now
Yeah.
are upset they're not getting the video.
Yeah. They had no idea what was going on. Like they don't know how it's
Right.
supposed to go. So you just like it doesn't need to happen. Yeah.
So we took about 4 months, and we spent that 4 months too, every day with other speakers as well, just going online together and just helping each other out,
Yeah.
and learning, because the amount of effort that it takes for me to look like this on camera right now, the amount of effort it takes for me to look normal, right? Like just like I do if you're sitting in front of me. Like
Yeah.
in front of me, I have two lights right now that are the brightness of the density of the sun coming at me right now. And the camera I'm talking to right now is 5 feet away from me. But I can't see you, by the way, right now. You're over here. I can see you if you move your head or anything. I can see movement, but I have to look
Okay.
this way to see you.
Ah,
So
okay.
I had to teach myself how to talk this way back and forth and react to how you're
With
reacting
the
in my
camera.
peripheral.
Okay.
So that's a whole, because if the computer's here, then it's in front of this, and I'm talking to the computer. And the whole point of this is to make it feel like we don't want to break your immersion
Right.
with me. So when I'm doing a webinar and there's a lot of people online, my goal here is to keep people listening, because you have 73 things you could be doing on your computer.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Engagement is tough.
we did them, and I did a handful of them, and it's you do what you have to do, but it's not why I do talks. I don't webinars aren't the thing I want to do. I thrive off of being with people
Yes.
and being on stage, and but also it's like, if I never could get on stage again, it was awesome.
You
So it
know
was
how,
like,
yeah. You have
you
to
gotta
do,
wait out, you gotta balance it. But also doing a webinar though, once I'm done, I click, I'm home,
that's
right?
yeah. And that is the lack of commuting, especially as roads get busier and busier and busier, is very, very
Huge
appealing,
difference.
right?
Yeah, very much, very much.
And you
And
have
then and
family and
that exactly it. So like, but there's also, it's good and bad. You click, you're done, and I'm home. I got no commute. But also, I do my talk, I click, I'm done, and I'm just looking at my treadmill.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
no audience, there's no applause, there's no
Yeah.
trade show. I love walking in the trade shows of everything. I get to see all these trade shows of industries and stuff. I love all doing all those
Yeah.
things. And it certainly is a whole different ballgame. But at the end of the day, it's a talk. So it's like there's people don't
It's
realize there's a huge difference.
it's so funny. So we were watching, as many people did. So we tried to make our life simple, or not
Yeah.
simple, more like we felt normal. So
Yeah.
we watched a concert with the Trues,
Yeah.
virtual. And they were playing at a venue downtown Toronto. And of course, because we're talking about it now, I don't remember the name of it, but it was like a big deal. The Danforth,
Yeah.
maybe?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so they played and they did this amazing set, like amazing. And you could see they were giving it everything and they're just
Yeah.
going. And then they finished and they're out of breath and they're staring out onto all of us, but nobody's there. And they're like,
Nobody.
this is like my worst nightmare. That's what he said. It's my worst
The
nightmare.
worst.
I've given it everything and there's nothing.
And that's where for me it's like I don't consider myself a marketer. I don't consider myself a writer. I consider myself a performer.
Yes.
And performance has an audience aspect to it for most of us.
Yeah.
And I don't care if you're an athlete and you played in the bubble in the NBA with no crowd, or you played in baseball that had no audience, or you were a speaker or a musician, or you were an acrobat in Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah.
You're there to perform for somebody.
Yeah.
Performing without people is practice,
Yeah.
right? To me,
Absolutely.
and that's the difference. And I don't like my reps. Like I don't. Here's one of the things for me too. I don't rehearse talks. I've never rehearsed a talk. I don't rehearse them. I don't go like it. I leave it open to also riff within it. But that's just my personality.
Yeah.
And so every rep every talk I do is a practice for the next talk. Right? It's just reps. It's getting those reps in. And without that audience feedback, I test material, and people are like, "How do you know if it's gonna be funny?" It's like I say because people laughed,
Yeah.
right? And every joke, every bit, and everything I have on stage was at one time just spontaneous, and
Nice.
it worked. And so you just put that in the memory bank. Like, okay, that hook worked, and then you hook work, and you just kind of and I work it in my brain, and next thing hopefully we have everybody laughing and clapping and happy they were there because there's 10,000 people that will do an opening or closing talk at a conference, even though the world, most people don't want to do it. There's a whole bunch of people who would do it and would be great at it.
Yeah.
And so for me to be the person that day at that time, it's an absolute honor
I
to
love
do
that.
that. And it's a privilege to be able to, because that's a huge trust. I'm not necessarily a safe choice for a lot of places because of what I talk about. Like
Yeah.
like we have a book called QR Codes Kill Kittens. Like, like it's like,
Yeah.
and the entire book is ripping on business mistakes. And
Yeah.
like, so we had our show, the On Podcast, was the only show a business doesn't want to be on.
Yeah.
It's called The Business Show for the Fed Up. Like, it's like, so I'm really appreciative when I am brought in because and people think, I get angry a lot, but and thank you for saying it. It's passion
Yes.
on stage, and I'm passionate about people. Let me rephrase that. I'm passionate about good people and those that want to help others.
Yes.
Again, which is why I love what you did last week in London. That's why it just endears me to anybody who just because it's so much work.
Thank you. And just for anyone that doesn't know what we're the thing last week, it's the Fight to End Homelessness event in London, Ontario. And the money raised goes to Youth Opportunities Unlimited. And when Scott and I were trying to set up the time for this, I let him know about it and he generously donated. Thank you.
Oh, just a
But
great event. Absolute least I can do.
it's
You do the work.
Do you know, we have the team that gets together and the fighters, like it is insane. It's kind of the better part of a year for each event, and we just did our fourth one, and we don't know what the amount yet, but I'm very confident that we're going to break the $1 million mark for total money given to this organization, to Youth Opportunities
Fantastic.
Unlimited.
Fantastic.
Um, and that's the thing is like that's when you wonder like why do people do what they do? I think for so many of us, and it's so nice to like band together with like-minded individuals when you have that passion for helping and giving back
Yeah.
in the way that you're supposed to.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
Now you originally said so you ended up writing the book because you wanted the path to the stage because you knew you could impact people, right?
Yeah. 100%.
There's a lot of books behind you though. So after the first book, what happened?
So here's the the secret to everything. It's Allison.
I love
who's the co-author of the books, the
that.
co-owner of UnMarketing, and most importantly to me, I get to be married to her, my
Yeah.
wife, Allison. And we met on Twitter.
You
I
met
have
on
the
Twitter?
I have the greatest social media ROI in history. Nobody can argue with me. That's why I'm so cocky about it. Because like how else would I meet this person from this wonderful woman from Burlington?
How did you meet on Twitter?
It was on Twitter. It was back then in '09 ish. It was I told you I joined Twitter because I didn't have a water cooler, like I didn't have other entrepreneurs, and
Yeah.
so I just started. And one of the things with me, I was a single dad, and with custody, so it was like I would be at home, and I'd be home in the evening, which is perfectly fine. I'd be like I just sort of hop on Twitter,
Yeah.
and then I'd put my son to bed, and I'd hop on Twitter at like 8 p.m. And it was me and a bunch of moms, and it was awesome. And I would start spinning tunes. I would use right back then was Blip FM and Groove Shark, and I would start tweeting out songs. My name was DJ Twitterlicious, and I would like Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock, Joy and Pain, and like Run DMC. Like we just go way back. Show Me Love by Robin S. Like we just go all the hits
Yes.
back in the day, right? So and then so what happened? It was me and mostly mom. We just connected because that's how we connected every evening. It was just like, and that's community.
Yeah.
And then we just started connecting, and I noticed Allison, and then she was funny, um, and uh, uh, so I went and looked at her website, and she had a company called Nummies, which was a nursing bra company she invented, but was maternity lingerie,
Oh,
because she
that's cool.
believed that new moms, she just found all the bras for breastfeeding were all dysfunctional, they were ugly,
Yeah.
and she said, a new mother deserves to feel beautiful.
Yeah.
And so that's what she did. But she went to Shenzhen, China, the factory, and like so. If you want to look who the
Oh,
entrepreneur is here, it's her, right?
amazing.
And so what happened was I saw on Twitter, and she had sent a tweet saying they were setting up a lemonade stand. Her kids were setting a lemonade stand, and I sent a tweet, which is on the wall here behind me,
Love it.
and it says at Nummies Bras, which is Allison.
Yeah.
No rain over there. Don't make me hop on the QEW for some lemonade. My little guy just said, "Can we go get some?" Now, in hindsight, that's probably creepy. That I now, in hindsight, can dissect multiple creepy things in that tweet and fine. And that opened it. So we started talking, and then one of the things I did back then, because also, I was out of money back then, was I would offer to do an unaudit of your marketing material. And I would look at your stuff, and I'd just say, because one of my things was I could find the holes and things, and where like, having a website's great, but is it functional? Is it working right? Am I, leaking out too many potential things? So I'd do that. So she asked, hey, would you do that for my website? And I was
Very
at Williams
cool.
Coffee Pub at Trafalgar and Dundas. The Williams back then was like the home of entrepreneurs,
Yes.
right? You jockey for position to get the booth with the outlet for your laptop, and
Yep.
then you battle on Foursquare who would be the mayor, or like it was everything. So you do this, and I decided. So she had sent me her site, and I tried to look it up, and it was blocked under Williams Wi-Fi for porn
Oh,
because it was lingerie.
no
And I'm just
bras.
like, oh, I like this person. Okay, this will be great. So then I looked at it later on. I said for sure. So then we met the next week at Williams Coffee Pub on the patio at
Nice.
right up at the street here. And she walked out of the door, and I just looked, and I just went, oh no. And I knew I was going to marry her.
Oh,
And we sat there for 8 hours and did not review her website, and just talked for 8 hours. And
that's
we haven't
amazing.
and we haven't stopped talking since.
Oh,
And so like the podcast, the show we did, which we did 320 episodes over 6 years.
yeah.
It was literally us just putting microphones between us, because it's how we talk with each other, and that's how
Yeah.
I love her brain. I love her, like all. So it's just like my favorite person in the world to talk to is also my wife and my business partner
It's
and the
funny.
co-author.
When I had asked you what the questions for today, one of my questions was like, so your life partner is your business partner. How does that work? I think that's how that works.
That's the thing. And also, but I didn't know then is she's a incredible writer. And
Amazing.
so I was writing on marketing, and I started writing it 18 days before it was due because I'm an idiot. And but that's what happens. And I'm talking to Allison back then on BlackBerry, on BBM, on
Oh
BlackBerry
yeah.
Messenger, right?
Yep.
So I'm talking, and she's like, hey, I'm just like, I just can't. I owe them 60,000 words. I've written 35,000, and that's every word I know. I've used up all of my words I know. She's like, can I take a look? I'm like, sure. And it was just a smorgasbord of vomit. It was just like articles together and this words from here. But I had it all mapped out of what I want to do in the book. But it's
Yeah.
just all just crap and crazy. And she started asking me questions. What do you mean by this? And I'm like, well, people know what that means. She goes, well, just pretend I don't. She just starts writing.
Nice.
And so UnMarketing that you saw in the
Yep.
original one was because of her jumping in and helping.
That's
And then
wonderful.
and then after all this, as it goes, like with UnLeadership, we had the 53 different leaders in it. She did all 53 interviews with them and made each section of theirs like 1,100 words a piece. And like so, she does the books, I do the stage. We
Yeah.
do the show together, and it's such a wonderful. I don't tell her how to write. She doesn't tell me how to talk. She's my biggest fan when I'm on stage. She's my biggest fan, and I am the biggest fan of her writing. And
I think
that's part of the secret right there.
that is, do you know what that is? That's kind of my husband and I don't, I mean, I guess we work together on charity things, but we don't work together per se, but that is the key to our
Yeah,
relationship too. It's being someone's biggest fan,
yeah.
supporting them and being there for them. So that I love that. Thank you.
Walk in, same. It's an old thing, right? If you walk into a room of people, I can look in any room. I'll walk into any room, and can you walk into a room and say, can anybody treat her better? And I have to answer no. It is
100%.
part. I have to.
Yeah.
I can't settle for anything less than that
Ah, that's very cool.
because you find when you get that after everything that's gone on, especially in the past 5 years in the world and life.
Yes.
I have somebody that at night we watch TV together for a couple of hours and laugh our asses off
Yeah.
every night. What else do you need?
No,
And
nothing.
now all of our kids have moved, all five of them have now they're all at U of T and OCAD and Fanshawe doing
Yeah.
music and all this stuff. And it's just I get to live with my best friend in a house that's now empty except with the animals.
Fair.
And it's the best. It's the absolute I am one of the most fortunate people there is.
Oh, that's amazing. I hope it's romantic over here. So yeah, that's
Oh,
um now as far as for the I know we're
by the way, it's our anniversary in 3 days. 11 years.
happy almost anniversary. That's
Thank you.
amazing. Okay, so I know we have a timeline for these, so I will very I'll try to steer us away, but I'm loving this so much. Um, so start to finish,
Yeah.
how long does it take you to write a book? When you so from idea to it's done is my first question.
Mhm.
And then my second question is, what is it other than kind of hiring you to speak or reading your books, which before I forget, I have to say I was very pleasantly surprised to see Derek Jones in
My
from,
man.
from Buffini. Yeah, yeah, he's amazing. And it was really nice to see him in UnLeadership.
Derek is one of my favorite people on
He
this
is
planet.
amazing. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's
He
I've
was
been
my chaperone
he was yeah,
at
that
the
makes
events
sense.
years ago.
Yep.
He's my chaperone. And I'm like, I'm not having a chaperone. What do you insane? What is this? A field trip with grade 8? Are we at the zoo? And he shows up and I'm like, can we be best friends?
He's so much fun and he's so good at what he does. He
I
just brings
adore that
people
man.
in.
He's
Yeah.
wonderful. And anytime I can be with him, around him, or in his orbit, it's a better day. And
Yes.
but that's what. So here's the how glorious it is to be able to write a book like on leadership was when you get this many books done is that you kind of pitch what you want as long as it's fleshed out you're good to go. And
Yeah.
we thought, okay, what else in can we do? We have unselling, unmarketing, unbranding. We don't want to write unnetworking because it would be one page and one sentence, and all it would say is "Don't be an asshole." Like that would be the whole book.
You
So
already
like
have that one. The Jackass
right,
Whisperer.
then the Jack said that. Thank you. And then so with unleadership, the problem is one of the things we talk about. We think empathy and self awareness is such a huge quality to have, not just in leadership but in life. So we have to be self aware and realize we are not out there. We're not in a corporation. We're not in a company. We're not doing the things,
Yeah.
right? Allison writes books. I do toxic, but I'm not. We're not in the 9 to 5. We're not in in the trenches of the business like that. So how we talk about leadership in the way instead we said, hey, we've met some incredible people in the past 15 years.
Yeah.
How about we elevate all of them? And those are the 53 people we got to hand pick. Some we knew, some we
Okay.
didn't, and very few are speakers. right? Because you just want to get outside of your own world.
Yeah.
And the great thing about it is the majority of the people in it are Canadian. So over 50% are Canadian. And it's just one of those things where you just look at these stories, and one is from a Domino's pizza franchisee
Yes.
in Ajax and Whitby,
Did you?
to
Sorry to cut you off. I noticed something really cool about the Domino's story.
yeah,
It was very similar to your story,
yeah,
where with famous players, where
yeah,
once it was explained to this guy that like his employee, like this is why we do it, this is how we do
yeah.
it. And I don't know if it was actually explained to you or you mentioned that it should have been. But all of a sudden this guy went from not showing up to being an exemplary employee and then moving up the ranks. And I thought that was a
Alan
really
telling us,
cool
yeah.
parallel.
So Alan's the franchisee that
Yeah,
we featured in it, and Alan was at a Domino's Pizza worldwide rally that was in Las Vegas, and I was one of the keynotes for it, speakers
yeah,
for it. And I got on stage and I talked about how is about you can support your people. That can be part of your marketing, and
yeah.
in spotlighting your people, not you. And once he told me, he wrote to me, he said, once I heard you, it was like giving me permission to do what I always wanted. And if you go to his LinkedIn, go to Alan Hill and just look at Domino's, you'll find him. Every single one of his posts are about him and his employees, or employees who have left and he's gone to visit their new business.
Ah,
I want you to think about that for a second. This guy will go, you've quit. We can word it whatever way you want, by the way.
yeah,
You've gone on to greener pastures. You've gone on to elevate the next step in life. You left.
yeah,
And a lot of the times, it's just bitterness. I don't care if it's business or you were dating. Either way, when you say it's a clean break, I'm going to argue. I'm going to argue that it's probably not a clean break for both
yeah.
people. Maybe you think it is, maybe not. He's not saying it to look good. He's in
Yeah,
a photo at their new business, supporting them with pizza because he's about community and people.
and people. Yeah,
And I just and he and the my one of my favorite things about this about UnLeadership is the most common thing said from interviewees was why me? And that's the key.
yes.
None of these people, for the most part, wherever even have leadership expert in a bio anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They're out there doing it. They're out there living it. And we've learned, and you find these people who are not surface level people,
Yeah,
they love people and humans. They're at their core. And
yeah,
that's what we wanted to find. And we've just found people that we just said, you're an exception, you're an exception, you're an exception. And so the book's 53 exceptions and
yeah,
exceptional people. And the one thing that bonds all of them too was that and curiosity, that they were curious about their people, they're curious about the industry, versus because curiosity dies really quickly.
yeah.
Think about that. Think about that. Let's just talk about like in real estate.
Yes.
So let's say you're too busy. Okay, so you're just running around, which always, by the way, collective wisdom,
COVID.
everybody learned this. Yeah. But you're running around. And then when it's not busy, you're just like, oh, I need to market. But when you needed to market was 6 months ago.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
6 months ago, you were busy.
It's it's very common, and there's a lot of realtors right now. There's a lot of people that got into the business when it seemed really easy. And
Yeah.
there was a time in 2021 that I could have just put a post-it on a front door and just managed the lineup. Absolutely. That's not selling though.
No.
An anomaly. That's something that's happening. But people got in going, well, that's easy. And that
Yeah.
was easy. But that's not what it is.
And that's what, and you have to decide is and that's what real estate I do. I've done and still doing, a bunch in the industry. We just did a whole thing last year with MCAP, went across the country and just talked to mortgage brokers and realtors and
Yes.
lenders. And the main difference I had found was some people were in real estate to make money and some people loved real estate.
Yeah.
And I found the people who loved real estate made money regardless.
It's,
Right.
I'll add category three is that so there's you can love real estate and then you can just love people and the way you help them, right? So and
Yeah.
I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Um and
I
so
agree.
some
It's like
people,
talking about
yeah,
like I talk about Melanie. I talked about her in Winnipeg. Melanie Day, who's in Alberta, and she did the a 30 days in January, 30 local businesses, one business a day, and she interviewed them on video
yeah,
during January. This is in like mid to northern Alberta,
yeah,
where in January, like you think it's cold in London right now, you
yeah,
don't
yeah,
leave. And
hard
so it's a
call.
very slow time, and that's when
Yeah,
all realtors are like, I don't have any business, I know this. So she went out and interviewed on video 30 business owners, because she's like, that's community is a
Yes.
verb. It's a verb. It's the
Huge.
actions you take.
Yep. And it's so important. And I think that's what I love. The common thing from the leaders that I read about in your book and from everything I've heard about you on stage, it's very much like care about what you do, care about the people you do it with, and mean it. Right.
Yeah.
So if you're not like that's the only way to success, really. Um,
100%. And
yeah.
that's how everything. I just love how Alan says in that one, in that story, which is he communicated with a younger person in a way
Yeah.
that was just straight and direct
Yeah.
and gave him the information. And that, look at through everything. That's almost everybody's asking for,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
It's just talk to
There's
me straight.
And I have to say, like, so my big recommend is that everyone reads On Leadership, all of your
Thank
books,
you.
but On Leadership, especially, like there was
Oh,
I
wait, I'm sorry. Can I answer your question?
yeah, yeah,
I never
absolutely.
even answered the freaking question. I'm so
You
sorry.
can't. You
I'm so
can't.
sorry. It's a very, so it's because it works really well for us. And I would love for you to know it.
Yeah,
So when it comes to, like, what goes in books and the writing
yeah,
process and how all that works, I'm so sorry. I'm so scattered. Also, I don't talk to a lot of humans. So I get all, frazzled, and I get used to talking to the cats, and they give me zero feedback. So the book. So it's kind of like a funnel. Okay. The
okay,
widest part at the top would be our show. Okay,
okay.
so it's like our when we had the show, and we're working on bringing it back. So get ready.
Nice.
But we'd have the unpodcast the show, and on the show we just collect stories and topics, and every month, and we go over in each show we'd go over 4 to 5 different stories. So 4 to 5 stories a week we go over. And at the end of all that, you kind of pare them down to the best, and a lot of those will make the guts of that was like unbranding. So unbranding, if you look, it says 100 lessons on branding in the age of disruption.
Yes.
Those 100 were taken from 1,000 stories in the show. So we
Okay.
did 1,000 stories to the 100 best that we thought would work for branding and within that
Yeah.
book. And then you go from the book to the talk. So then you take the couple stories and those go in the talk. So
Yes.
it's like so it goes from the least amount of content because of the least amount of time, which is an hour on stage, to the
Yeah.
book, to the show, to like Twitter. And so everything works together. And so, especially when the show's going, it would keep us active on topics and watching and listening. So when somebody
Okay.
say, "Hey, did you hear about that?" I'm on top of it.
Oh, I love that. Now, is that kind
Right?
of so? Would that be how you found out about Joshi? The
Exactly how I found out about
yes.
Josh. So
Okay.
so one of the things. So how do I? So one of the things with us, like anything, if I'm going to speak in Winnipeg in front of Royal LePage and the
Yeah.
national audience, how am I going to get up there and talk about real estate? I'm not a realtor. I
Yeah.
know I don't like a lot of realtors. So how am I going to win this whole world over?
Yeah.
Find good stories that relate to realtors.
Love it.
But here's the thing: every talk I do, I come from the angle of the customer.
Yes.
So that's where you can't argue with a lot of the stuff if I'm coming from the customer. Or I
Yeah.
can't, if I came in and said, "Well, I'm going to tell you how to do real estate better," you'd be like, "Oh, go ahead. Let me hear this. What the hell do you know?" Because I don't. But what I do know is people
Yeah.
and how messages spread and how marketing spreads and
Yeah.
how customers react to things. And so you take all those things together and say, what would be the best fitting? So when I go do a talk, we look at the stuff, and it's really, if I have an hour talk, I break it down into 4 sections in my head, right? 15,
Okay.
15, 15, 15.
Yeah.
The first 15 is opening, last 15 is closing, and the two in the middle. So you
Yeah.
have an opening story, a closing story, and the middle is what I work with sometimes, depending on the client, the event.
Yeah.
So usually I open with Joshi, the Ritz-Carlton story, or it's President Benson
Yeah.
shoveling the driveway from Eastern
Yeah.
Kentucky University. Why? Those are anchor stories. The reason why those two are like that, though, is because they're both also very safe.
Yes.
I don't go full Stratten on them yet. You know what I mean? Like, you don't release the Stratten at that point. We're just simmer down for a moment. Joshy's it's a stuffed giraffe story. It's very calm and awe and kind.
Yeah.
President Benson's funny, right? And I really get to disarm the audience. If I
Yeah.
came out with my middle content at the start, people would just walk out because I walk on looking like the sound guy and like walk in and start ripping on people. You can't. So when I start ripping on older people,
Yeah.
because it was only part of the middle, because we bias towards the younger generations, I can't walk out and say that. But when I've warmed you up, once I get through Benson and the mom holding the dog in the weird way and all this type of stuff, once I get at the end of that, we are one. We're
Yeah.
on this ride together. We are together. You and me are on the same side. Great. Now I'm going to tell you why you suck, but not in the way you think I'm saying it. My
Um,
loudest audiences, my biggest standing ovations are all real estate. I open real estate talks usually with, "I hate realtors."
yeah.
That's kind of how I open a lot of them.
I
because it's
remember.
funny, because it's funny to me. But also because I also have experienced all the marketing, so that's why. But then I preface it and say it's marketing, not this and da, da, da. But that's the point, right? How you
Yeah,
structure a talk's important, right? But here's also the thing, though. With an hour, if I riff, it's a fixed amount of time. So if I go
yeah,
too long in the middle when I start talking about generations because it's going really well and the audience is loving it, and I
yeah,
tell a movie theater story, I keep going and going, the
yeah.
more I riff, the less time I have at the end.
Right.
So my job is to, no matter what, one, end on time.
Yes.
So huge.
Yep.
And by the way, ending 10 minutes early, don't do that either. Like,
Yes.
just end within the zone. Within that, give it a minute under or less.
Yes.
That's my goal. Because you run over. But the thing is, though, like in Winnipeg, y'all missed a whole section because I was going so well, so I went in a different direction. But you didn't know that, did you?
No.
That's the point.
Yep.
When you're professional speaking, and is it about that when I finish, you got everything you were supposed to get, but
Yes,
also what you got was better because you were also into it. We kept going down a certain topic.
for
So
sure.
that means you got a custom. Like, it was just for that. That's my favorite because we were all in the moment. But
Yeah.
when you set everything up to exactly the second and exactly or the word count, you have no room to move. You have no
That's,
room to riff, and you have
yeah.
no room for people. And if somebody puts their hand up, you're screwed.
Yeah. And I think that I like that perspective because I find it can be really hard to have everything scripted.
Yeah.
I'm not a big script person either. And I like that. I like this perspective because you can still have structure. Like you do have structure. You just have
You
your own
can.
freedom within it, right?
And I think, but there's also a difference. There's a difference between doing a lunch and learn
Yeah.
to a workshop to a breakout to a keynote.
Yes.
Like a keynote, I always tell people who do speak or are interested in kind of doing a keynote versus a workshop or a breakout is if you already have a talk, you've been working on it. Let's say, I would always almost every time say it, I'd see it and say take out half
Yeah.
and then add in two stories,
The
right?
stories are huge. Yeah. Absolutely.
Because that sets the tone.
Yeah.
So when I finish that day, you go off to your breakout sessions, your concurrent sessions. The goal is to have that messaging carry through, which is why I don't get into interest rates and these type of things. It's not my business. My
Yeah.
business, when I carrying through, was if you believe business is built on relationships, make building them your business. I want that to carry through. And therefore, anybody in my audience, because usually the concurrent speakers are in there too, they
Yeah.
go back to their talk and they can say, like Scott said, that's the goal. Is so the keynotes are relevant enough that
Yes.
the people speaking after you can jump back to it and say that this also backs up my point. I want to back up the people talking after me. I'm not going to change what I say. I hope if you're up there and you say, you know what, you can hate people and just screw everybody over. It's not. It's. I hope my thing carries through. But usually, if I'm speaking at an event, they already know what
It,
I'm like and what I talk about.
yeah. And I find like, so the other thing I know I'm sure you do it to be funny, but like when you talk about whether it's Joshy and the inappropriate dolphin or the dog, like they're funny, but I feel like anyone that maybe was starting to like zone out or has a hard time listening, like I feel like it's a little tool that like makes
100%.
them look. Okay.
That's part of it. Everything is about I'm just trying to keep you off your phone,
Yeah. That's
right? Like,
100%. Absolutely.
the bigger the audience, the harder that is because you can just hide in the crowd,
Yeah.
right? I call the people out standing at the back too because I know you're going to bolt if you don't like it. I know you while you're back there,
Yeah.
right? And it's that part of that. And I see sometimes they'll have events or speakers will say, please power your phone off or put it away. Look, if you're not more interesting than Candy Crush, that's more on you, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I don't want to, because when you open your talk, you get a chance to set the tone. And when you walk out and tell people to turn their phones off or put them away,
Yeah,
you're
that's not a
setting off
great
the
tone to
wrong tone.
start with. I
Yeah,
like
I
your
get.
tattoo
Plus,
and
and
learn.
I love playing off it. If your ringer's on, oh, I love it. Oh, I love it if your ringer, especially if you just use the default one, right? And usually it's like somebody who's 50 or something like me. They're just like, and their phone just starts doing the same ring, and I get to look at them I'm like, there's other choices other than default, sir, right? And then everybody else laughs at it. It's so much fun, but that's also my personality, and I don't want to. I just like it's just my style, and I get to be able to do that. That's how I've structured
It's
it.
the
But
freedom you have. When did
yeah,
you get the unlearn tattoo?
oof, that was about 10. 15 years ago. So unlearn the tattoo, which I forget I have all the time because it's on my forearm and I can't see it,
Fair enough.
is from the movie Higher Learning from the 90s. So
Okay.
John Singleton film, and Tyra Banks, Omar Epps, Lawrence Fishburne, just fantastic movie. It really just burned into my brain. And at the very end of the movie, this is the word that comes up on the screen, and it just freezes on this word, and it fades to black with just this unlearn in white. And it's about unlearning hate, and that nobody's born hating
Oh,
anybody. And so I took a screenshot of it from the movie, brought it to my tattoo artist, and said, "Put this exact thing on my arm."
that's amazing.
And it's just like, and it just happens to work with the brand. It's just
Yeah,
coincidence, but
it
people are like,
really
"Oh, it's part
does.
of your brand." I'm like, I wouldn't tattoo my brand on me. I would not. No. So I Dennis Leary has a great line about hate, which is, where everybody hate is learned, because my 2-year old hates naps. End of list. And I love that, which is just like we learn to hate each other. We learn to hate people
Yeah.
from race, religion, gender, everything. And that, if we just remember that, it really is a reminder for me too. Every time I see it in the mirror, it's just, I think, to me, your body can be a canvas,
Yeah.
and we choose, what we put on. I'm just glad I waited till I was 30 to get my tattoos, because otherwise I would have a whole bunch of different tattoos if I was 18.
Yeah.
I'd have
That's,
like, like a Toronto Maple Leafs thing, and I would have a Pantera, Metallica. It's like and now everything I have, it's all pretty much family.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's, I think yeah, it's a really cool way to express, but it's definitely a conversation starter being on the forum.
Yeah, and it doesn't, and get whatever you want. You got the Tasmanian Devil and everything else, and Mighty Mouse from the '90s. Go nuts. That's cool. That's
Have
cool.
fun with it.
Uh,
Absolutely. Now we're almost at that time, but just how can how can we support you? How can people learn more? Would it be checking out, other than reading the book, but checking out
mhm.
your website? Um,
Yeah, yeah. It's really, the books are out there wherever fine books are sold, and
love
we have
it.
7 of them. So whatever suits your fancy. UnMarketing on Instagram, UnMarketing on LinkedIn, and
Yeah.
UnMarketing.com. Yeah,
And the podcast is coming back.
and wait for the new year. Yeah, we're going to work
Love
on
it.
potentially bringing the show back. People have only been asking for 5 years or so. So we're but
Amazing.
also that, by the way, I know we're wrapped up here,
Yeah.
but that example of what we haven't done in 5 years, that's proving our point, which is we do the show because we love to do it,
Yeah.
and when we don't, because other things take priority, we don't do it.
Yeah.
And that's always been our business. We wouldn't send a newsletter if we didn't think we had something to say.
Yeah.
It's right. We don't do things. We just doing things forced. People will know. Your
Yes.
audience will know, and they'll understand. But that's why that we'd bring back the show when we're ready, and we're just about ready.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Scott. This has been
Of course.
fantastic.
No, thank you.
I
Had a great time.
I would like to, will you do a nose touch picture with me? I'm going to take
Yeah,
a photo of us. Hold on one sec. I can put it with my collection. We have one from, I think, 2016
we
and
do.
18.
We
Very
do.
exciting.
That's
Okay.
right.
So you just touch your nose. Thank you.
You're welcome. Very
Amazing.
welcome.
So thank you everyone for listening. This is Realtor Life with Krystal Lee Moore Lucier, also known as your home sweet home 509 Realtor. And we had Scott Stratten on, the co-founder of UnMarketing. Allison is a co-founder of UnMarketing. And we will see you next time. Bye,
Thanks.
guys.
Bye, everybody.